Hello everyone, and welcome to C-View Quantum Network. I'm your presenter Daniel, and I'm here with producer Claudia Pareco. Our opening song features Reach for the Stars, from Cyclone's new album, Showtime, available on all music stores and platforms. A moment of your time is one of the most extraordinary gifts we could ever be given. We are honored every time we've received a moment of your time. We are servants of the New Age, the time of prophecy, the time of the ascending sixth sun. We are a platform for alchemists and multidimensional souls. We connect with many planes of reality and assist the awakening journey. We are pure light, transmitters of high vibrational light out into reality. Our shows are held on Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. At any moment to participate on our shows, please call 805-830-8344 and press 1 to talk with the host. Call for free at 805-830-8344 and wait in line, or you can use Take My Call, and for $11 you can jump the long list of callers. Do so at www.paypal.me/PURECO/11 and then please PM or email Claudia Pareco at cview1111@gmail.com and include the phone number you'll be using to call the show. All of our podcasts are easily found in all social media and are available free, live, or on demand. To request a show, please write to Claudia Pareco at cview1111@gmail.com or visit our website, cview1111.net. Now, let's listen to our host and topic of the day.
Thank you, Danny, and welcome everybody to CU 2022. Today's show is Ghost on a Medium Vacation series, and we are talking about one of the series of books by author Gutro, and this is focused on his vacation, what happens when a medium goes on vacation. And we are talking about specifically the one he did in England, in Arizona, and some other places where wherever Rob goes, he encounters something or someone. So our author of the day today is a paranormal investigator, a medium with inspired ghost tracking of Maryland. Since he was a child, he could receive messages from ghosts or spirits who had crossed over. As a scientist, he also provides some scientific explanation about how energy is the baseline for the afterlife and the medium that entities use to communicate. So some of the theories that he has written are called, first is the Pest and the Afterlife, Ghost on a Medium Vacation, and Ghost in Spirit. Today we are talking about all of those occasions where Rob had encountered ghosts in his vacation, because even though he's mostly known as the pet medium, he can also communicate with people. And I don't know about you, but it is very interesting to me when you hear about someone that can go places and see or hear or sense what is there. So, Rob, thank you for coming back. I am so happy to have you here today and so excited about our conversation. Okay, so I think we're having a little difficulty hearing, so I'm going to call Rob on his cell phone because we cannot hear him. So now let us talk a little bit about what's going on today. We are in North Carolina, transmitting from North Carolina, and we are waiting for Ian, the hurricane, to come through this way. So let's see. Hey, Rob, can you hear me now? Rob, can you hear me? Okay, so let's see if here we can hear him. Hey, Rob, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Rob? Yeah, so we cannot hear Rob. Let's try to call him one more time.
Hello.
Hey, Rob, can you hear me now?
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Okay, and I think it's better, right, the sound?
Great. Yeah, I think we may be having a little connection problems, but I think we've got everything solved. Good to be back.
Well, I hope so. So, were you able to listen to the intro or nothing?
I did. Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. At least that was heard. So, okay, so now I'm so happy to have you here, as I was saying, because I really enjoyed our first conversation some months ago. So, and people can go and listen to that interview free as always, and also this one, about you communicating with our pets and how beneficial that is. But then you started telling me about this series about a ghost on a ghost on a medium vacation series, and it was like, oh, that's so much fun. But to me, it's fun. I don't know if it's fun for you. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it is kind of fun. When I first started taking vacations, after my abilities awakened in 2005, things became very interesting. I would encounter ghosts that decided to stay behind in various locations, and they kind of gave me an insight about the history of the places that I visited. And England was famous for that, because wherever I went, there was somebody who decided to stay behind and share their experiences.
So so why would you choose to stay behind when there's heaven? Why would you rather stay here, or have they told you?
I have heard from a number of different ghosts why they've stayed behind, and some are good reasons and some are bad reasons. So some people loved the places that they lived during life, and they just didn't want to leave. Mostly those would be royalty or people who were very happy with their lives, no matter what frame of mind they were in or what profession they were in. Other people stayed behind because they were afraid to cross over. They were afraid of what would happen. And yet other people were killed. They were murdered, and they woke up confused, and they stayed too long, and that's how they get stuck here.
Wow. So when you see that, when you find these ghosts that are stuck, let's say, do you help them cross over, or what is your mission, or why would you be having these encounters?
So there's a couple of answers to that question. So yes, my primary purpose would be to help them cross over and to find peace. But because every ghost has their own personality that they had when they were alive, some of them don't want to cross over. Some of them are still afraid, and they choose to stay behind no matter how much I try to convince them. So, people can be very stubborn, so you have to let them do what they want. But for the most part, they have chosen to stay in the afterlife, and they kind of stick with it.
So why don't we talk about some examples? Like I read that you had an encounter with Anne Boleyn. That's one of the famous ones. And did you have a conversation with her? Did you try to find out why she was there and a good idea why she would remain in the tower?
I'm sorry, which ghost was this? I couldn't hear
Anne
you.
Boleyn?
Oh, Anne Boleyn. Sure. So Anne Boleyn is one of the wives of Henry VIII, and she was beheaded when Henry kind of got tired of her. And she haunts actually the Tower of London. That is one of the places that she haunts. When I was in the Tower of London, I ran into Anne Boleyn's ghost in the Chapel Royal of St. Peter ad Vincula. Now that's where she was interred. That's where she was buried. After she lost her head, she was buried there. And there were some other weird circumstances too with her body. After she was killed, Henry VIII threw another fit, and apparently he had her dug up and he put her remains in quicklime to dissolve them because he was so angry with her. So when I went into the Tower of London, there's a little church called St. Peter ad Vincula. When I walked into the church, there was a great heaviness, a great sadness. And that was Anne Boleyn. She was conveying what she felt before she was executed. And it was like a blanket. So there are a couple of things in terms of paranormal activity, Claudia. One is called residual energy, and that is emotional energy, emotions that people have that are impressed upon the structure of a building. So when you walk into a building, if you are sensitive, you can feel whether or not they are happy, sad, angry, joyful, depressed. You get that kind of feeling in a building. Also, there are intelligent haunts. And intelligent haunts are the ones that are interactive. Those are the ones that can communicate with people. They can make noises, they can touch you, and they can make you feel cold spots. If you're a medium, you can actually hear them in your head. Sometimes you can see them. But she was an intelligent haunt, and she interacted with me to let me know how sad she was at the end of her life.
And yeah, so I can relate to that. I remember going to Pakistan, and we went to this place where they used to have these children that they were mostly girls, and they were chosen for their they were chosen, like they would be chosen to remain in this room because they were a deity to the people. So they were considered a deity until they would become a girl, until they would have their menses. So they were in this place secluded, and they could only go out one time a year. And I remember so I remember being there, and it was a big privilege for a parent to have your child chosen. But when you were there, you could feel the loneliness, the sadness, because for a child to be on a room, even though she had everything she could hope for, dresses, food, whatever she needed, but she could not go out but once a year. And it was so depressing, but I did not talk to any of those, but I could feel that. So I can understand when you tell me that you can feel the emotion or something on the structure. So having the ability to, plus, besides that, to talk or to see something gives you more understanding of what's going on. there?
Yeah, it really does. Especially, it lets you feel what the times were like. And when I went to England in 2012 and 2013, we visited a lot of Tudor-era places, from Whitehall Palace, the banqueting house, to Hampton Court Palace, to the Tower of London, to Westminster Abbey. And all of those places had different entities conveying their lifetime, something that happened during their lifetime to me. So it's fascinating to talk to people who were alive in the 1500s, sharing what they encountered.
And then also in that book, you talk about a past life that you yourself encountered. Can you share us a little bit about that?
So a past life experience, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So,
but that was not
yeah,
there in London. I'm sorry. That's when you went to the Birdcage Theater, right?
Yeah, that one was in Birdcage, but my husband, Tom, actually had an interesting past life experience in the England trip. He did a past life regression, which is when you work with a regressionist and they kind of put you under, and then you start and he takes you backward, and then you start explaining things that you've seen before in what turns out to be a past life. So he knows that he had lived before in Tudor England, which is why he's drawn to it. So for anybody listening, if you are fascinated with a certain location in the world and a certain time period, it's most likely that you lived at that time at that place before. Mine was in Tombstone, Arizona in the 1880s, and that happened when I visited there.
And what was your fascination about Tombstone, Arizona? Did you always, like, when you watch movies about that era, or how do you know? Like, England is easy to pinpoint, in my opinion, like, oh, England, and you find when you're doing history and everything, you'll hear about these places. But what about Tombstone caught your attention, or how is it that you pinpoint that place?
Okay, so we'll switch over to Tombstone, and so for those that don't know, Tombstone, Arizona it's an old mining town in the west, in the southern part of Arizona. It was founded in 1877 when a silver miner named Ed Shefflin struck silver in the desert, and then he created his first silver mine, and he called it Tombstone, and then the town of the same name was built up around it. So how I came to find out about it is there was a movie back in 1993 that was depicting the life of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and the OK Corral events, the shootout that happened in 1881, October 26th. So as I was watching that film in the theater, something was eerily familiar to me. And I wanted to know more. So after the film, Claudia, I decided that I would read as much as I possibly could about Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and the Old West. And I didn't know why. I was just fascinated. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, by the way, so that's the farthest thing you could get from the Old West and a cowboy. Long story short, over time, I would go to different places where Wyatt Earp lived, different states, and investigate things. And I wanted to put together a book because there was something really strange and familiar about it. Well, in 1994, the year after the movie, I went to Arizona, and I went to Tombstone. And I wanted to satisfy my curiosity. So I went there, and I dressed up as Wyatt Earp, and I had a friend of mine dressed up as Doc Holliday, and we thought that would be just a really fun way to see the town. So this town, by the way, was only in operation from the late 1870s to 1889, and then it closed down because all the silver mines flooded, and everybody left the town. So it essentially became a ghost town with only about 100 people that lived there for a while. But my past life experience happened when we first got to the town in 1994. We parked on the outside of town. We walked probably about 2-3 minutes into town from the very end of town, and somebody stopped me and asked me for directions to one of the historic buildings that still stood there, the courthouse that was built in 1881. Claudia, I told this person the exact way to get to this courthouse. I told them it was 2 blocks down. They had to take a left, go 1 block down, take a right, and the courthouse was on the left-hand side. And my friend was looking at me, and this was in 1994. There was no internet. There were no paper maps of the town that we could get before we visited. There's no way I could have known the layout of this town. But that's exactly where the courthouse was. And my friend was stunned. He said, we better go check that out to make sure you didn't give this tourist bum directions. And sure enough, it was right where I told him it would be.
And when that happened, how did you feel? Because probably you were just answering automatic at first, and then you're like, how do I know that? Or didn't you?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. After I answered the question, I thought, what in the world did I just tell this guy? And how do I know that? And it wasn't until much later
that you
that
find
I
out
figured it
about
out.
it. Oh.
Yeah.
And do we know who you were in particular, or is that something that you want to remain hidden?
I actually did a past life regression, and I learned that I was someone who worked in one of the mines. I saw myself in miner's clothing, and I saw myself with a hound dog, and I was in a small wooden cabin. And that's apparently who I was at that time, back in the 1880s.
Wow.
So I was no one famous, but obviously I was well aware of, the Earps and the cowboys and all that stuff.
But that's also something very important that I have found out, is that many times when we learn about a past life, it's about this life where we were not important, but we were. But there is always a why we remember those past lives. So there's a message there. There's something important in that life which makes it significant for the person, right?
Yes, I agree. And I thought about that also. And one of the things that I've concluded is, at that time, I remember seeing that there was a hound dog with me. And in this life, I am a big advocate of pets. As you know, you mentioned earlier that I'm also considered a pet medium. So dogs played a big role in my life at that time, and now they play an even bigger role in my life.
Yeah, I guess for a minor to have a dog, probably he found you if you get lost or things like that. I think it would be very important. Or maybe you were all alone and that was your company. I don't know, but yeah, dogs and pets for me are also very, very, very important, very significant.
Yeah.
You're right. Because I remember always in my family, we always have dogs, but the role they play in my life, dogs in particular, is just extremely important. Like, I cannot think of my life without them and without the interaction that you have with them. Where there are other people would say, what? Having a dog? You're crazy, too much work. And you're like, what? Not having a dog? How can you live without a dog? They are so important. So
Yeah, absolutely. And while I was in England, I actually ran into a ghost dog, and that's also in my book, Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation. There was a little dog named Fanny, and I was totally taken by surprise by her appearance. My husband and I went to a museum called Johnstone, the Johnstone Museum. Johnstone was a very famous British architect, and his home was filled with artifacts. And when he and his wife passed, they turned it into a museum. And my husband, being an architect, wanted to go see it. So as soon as we walked in, there was a little black and tan dog running around that I saw, and I said something, and he said, "There's no dog here." And I said, "Yes, there is. There's a dog here." It turned out as we walked through the museum that I saw snippets of the dog, like little flashes, and I asked somebody that worked there, and they said, yes, every single person that worked there confirmed that little Fanny, Mrs. Stone's dog, still lives in that house, and they have all seen the dog. In fact, they asked me if there was a human ghost, and I said, no, there's only a dog. And they said, that's exactly what everybody who works here has confirmed. There is no human ghosts, only the dog stayed behind.
Wow, and why would a dog stay behind?
So what I've found out is that this little dog, Fanny, was very, very attached to Mrs. Stone. So when Fanny passed away, Fanny didn't want to cross over. And that's very unusual for a dog because 99% of dogs and cats will cross over. But so Fanny stayed behind with Mrs. Stone, and when Mrs. Stone passed away, she crossed over, but Fanny decided to stay behind because Fanny loved greeting people that came to the house. And even today, in the afterlife, 150 years later, Fanny still greets people every time they come in the front door.
That's so funny. So, well, this
so she's,
I guess.
Yeah, so that's a happy reason. So she just loves people. So, and she meets thousands of them every year, apparently.
And in one of your books, you tell how even the ghosts serve like guide tours for you, like they show you here, very proud, or you go to Cleveland, Ohio, and you have a ghost there that doesn't want to cross over because he's very proud of the job that he did at that hotel. So tell us a little bit more about when you are toured with these ghosts. Do they wait for you to, like they are right beside you showing you around? Because they can go through walls and stuff, and you can't. So how do they behave with you?
Sure. So, yeah, interesting that you brought up my recent trip to Cleveland. I went into a place called the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Cleveland. I'd never been there before. And there was a gentleman who was balding with a pencil-thin mustache. He was a ghost, and he was he was proud of cleaning the lobby, and that was his job. And he stayed there because he was very proud of it. And he loved the hotel. It was his second home. He didn't want to cross over either. But so that's one example. I went to when I went to Hever Castle in England. I ran into the ghost of Anne Boleyn's brother George. Now I didn't know that it was the home of the Boleyn family, but he introduced himself, and then he actually walked me and my husband around the castle, and he pointed out different things in different rooms, which I was able to verify when I got home from the trip. So we had our own ghostly personal tour guide of Hever Castle in England.
Wow. And how do they look like? You can see them, right? And now you can see them in your mind eye. But when that is, you're perfectly able to distinguish between real person that you see and a ghost?
Yes, I mostly see the ghosts in my mind. It's very rare that I actually visibly see them. So what happens when I go on these trips, or if I go on paranormal investigations, is I take a journal with me, a blank journal, and I am able to sketch them out. So in both my Ghosts of the Birdcage Theater book and my Ghosts of England book, readers will see sketches of the ghosts that I encountered because I sketched them out. And there were a number of them. In England, there was a gentleman wearing a long cloak and a big hat. There was I sketched out George Boleyn's ghost. I sketched out a woman with a dress that I was able to find something similar online that dated back to the 1600s in Whitehall Palace in Tombstone, Arizona. When I walked through the Birdcage Theater, there were ghosts that I encountered that were either ladies of the evening or gamblers or actors, and I was able to sketch them out too. So whenever readers will read my books, not only can they use these books as like tour guides, because they're filled with history, but you'll also get a sense of the kind of people that lived at the various times when these places were thriving in history.
So you can actually bring the book with you, like if I go to Arizona, and that will help me also tour the place because you are giving all of these historical tips, right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So I try to make my my medium's vacation books twofold in purpose. One is to explain about the paranormal ongoings, and the other is to provide the history and the background of the buildings or the area or the location that you're visiting so that you have an understanding of how the people who still live there as a ghost used to live when they were alive in the physical. So if you love history and you love paranormal, these are why I write these books.
Now, you also told a story about one time you went to Thornberry Castle, and you had a ghost that took residence in your room. Did you took residence in the room the ghost was, or did he came to the room and stay with you while you were there?
So we ran into a ghost in Thornberry Castle when we booked it. So Thornberry Castle is in England. It's in it was a castle that was built in 1511, and it was owned by Edward Stafford. He was of the Plantagenet family, and the Plantagenet family was a rival for the crown against Henry VIII. So just a little bit of history here is that Henry VIII didn't like his rivals for the crown, so he often had them executed. And Edward Stafford was no exception. So Edward Stafford had begun construction of Thornberry Castle. And when Henry VIII executed him, Henry VIII took his half-finished castle. And Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn stayed at this castle in 1535. Now today, although the castle remains half-finished, the finished part is now a luxury hotel.
Wow. So
you can stay there. It's a big bed and breakfast. And it's really gorgeous. They furnished the rooms similar to how they looked during the Tudor period.
Mm-hmm.
So when we had planned our trip to England, we worked with a travel agent called Across the Pond Vacations, and they found this hotel. They found this castle hotel for us. We didn't know anything about it. Our room was in one of the existing towers. And what's fascinating is as soon as we opened the door, they're giant wooden doors. Think about doors that are like 8 feet high, all wood plank, about 4 feet wide. you really get the castle feel.
Heavy.
So yeah, it is, and it's heavy, right? So we open the door, and my husband Tom also has the ability to sense ghosts, not as pronounced as mine, but he does. So as soon as we walked in, we both sensed a man was standing there, a ghost. And our initial feelings was that this man had a sword, that he was related or associated with the castle in some way, and we didn't know anything about him. When we took a picture near the door, the outside of the door, an orb appeared in one of the photographs. Now, an orb, for those who listening, is the most simple form a ghost can take. If it has colors and designs in it, it's probably an orb. If it's white, it's likely a reflection of a bug or something like that. But this had colors and designs in it. So we knew that there was somebody there. That night, when I was in the shower, I heard a man's voice, and he said, "My name is Rupert." And I thought, okay, oh gosh, now I know your name. Then he gave me the name of a town, which I didn't know it was a town. So I wrote all these things down. I wrote down Rupert. I wrote down this name, which I later found out was a town. And then I did some lookup of history when I came back. But a couple of funny, quirky things happened when we were in the hotel room. One was I asked Rupert kindly if he would not wake us up until sunrise. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a room with a ghost, you have to treat them nicely if you want to be treated nicely. So my big mistake was not realizing that sunrise at that time of the year was 5:30 in the morning. So the castle, the windows to the castle, they had clear windows, but in front of every window, and there were only two in the room, there were iron grates, and they were locked. So at 5:30 in the morning, the iron grate unlocked itself and slammed against the stone wall. That was Rupert.
My God.
And he woke up.
That's freaky.
Yeah, we were both sound asleep, and we jumped out of bed, totally startled, and we were trying to figure out what happened, and Tom said to me, what in the world happened? And I said, I realized that I asked Rupert not to wake us up until sunrise, and it's 5:30, and the only way he could wake us up is by unlocking the grated window and slamming it against the wall.
Oh no! And was Rupert laughing when that happened? Probably. If I was a ghost and I see your reaction, I'm like, ha 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 ha! Look at these people.
Yeah, he's probably saying, "Look at these two dummies that didn't know what time the sun comes up in the summertime." But so what's fascinating about Rupert was how I came to figure out who he was. So when I got home, I took all this information and I put it together, and I did an extensive search. And I found out that there was a gentleman, and he was a prince, and his name is Prince Rupert, and he was in a battle that was near the castle, and I can't remember the name of the town that he gave me. I think it's Wittenden. I can't remember. It's in the book. When I was able to figure out who it was, sure enough, that the name that he gave me of the town or the borough was exactly correct. He was a prince. His greatest defeat was in that particular battle, and that was in very close proximity to Thornberry Castle. So that's why he chose to haunt Thornberry Castle, because there was no other structure. There's no other structure now that survives from the 1500s. So what I found is that when the ghost decides to linger from a time period and the structure that they used to inhabit is torn down, they will go to the next closest structure. And that's what Rupert did.
Wow. And well, what do you believe? Like, I'm trying not to be so linear as I was before into thinking that you have one body, one soul, but that you have different dimensions in your soul where you could actually have just a part of you left behind, like a ghost, and then the other part of you can just continue your journey without all of you being stuck. Do you think it could be possible that which we think of, oh, how sad is stuck, is just a part of that, who you are, and not the whole of you?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. It would to me it would be like splitting energy. But in my experience, I tend to think that once we are an entity of energy, we stay together, and that's why we have ghosts in a fixed location that need to cross over and have peace. So, in my experience, I think we stay together as an entity, an energy entity, either earthbound or crossover. I'm not sure that we can split up, but we'll find out eventually,
Yeah,
right?
Eventually we'll find out. Yeah, because that's part of the things that I am now thinking about. Is like, okay, so there are so many things that we used to see as truth, like absolute truth, and this is the way it is, which now we are kind of shifting from that thinking mentality into something different, which we have not yet understand what it is. So I was thinking that maybe that's something like that. And again, you're right. I cannot prove it. Nobody can prove it, but it's part of the things that are shifting, probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's a learning experience. So every day we learn something more. But with my experiences, as I said, they're either one or the other right now.
And
So
Rob,
I try to focus on.
Sorry, when I follow you and I follow your trips and everything, it's like then you go to Maryland and you also have a hunting experience in Linville Manor, a bed of breakfast in Maryland, and then you go to Arizona and you go to England and you go to Cleveland. So is there any place in the world that you have been that you don't have a ghost?
Well, I'm sure. Well, there have been places that have been relatively quiet. But I will tell you one of the things that I've noticed when I travel, if I am not feeling well, I block out all the messages from any earthbound ghosts. I had taken a trip to Italy in 2016, and I was very sick. I had a sinus infection, and I did not encounter any ghosts at all because I was not feeling well. Basically, my sickness blocked them all out.
Well, and it makes sense, right, that you need your own energy for yourself, and that's why you couldn't see them, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It acts as a block because you're trying to heal your own energy. So it's not every place I go that I run into somebody, but I like to write about the places that have a lot of different people from a lot of different time periods. And one of the one of the next books in the series that I'll be working on in 2023 is my vacation in Ireland and Scotland, where I ran into a lot more ghosts.
Yeah, Ireland, that would be a place full of stories. And so are we, in that book, is there a particular story that we should be on the look for?
All I will tell you is that when I went to, I think it was Cork County, and I think that's in the western side of Ireland, we went into a jail, and it was extremely haunted. And I think, and I actually captured a picture of a shadow figure crossing the hallway. So I'm looking forward to talking about that maybe next year or the year after. But there are so many.
And Rob, I remember in one of your posts that you did on your LinkedIn, you show a picture of a lady, and you said that you had pictured the ghost in that picture, and to the life of me, I could not find the person or the face of the woman. Was that the smiling thing that was there, or I was looking for something, but I couldn't. And so, what did I miss?
Okay. I think that you're referring to, so there was one investigation called the Case of the Double Murder Ghost Investigation that I did when I with the Inspired Ghost Tracking team. And that's in my book, Case Files of Inspired Ghost Tracking. When we were on an investigation, we were investigating a private residence where children were reporting shadow figures and sheets being pulled off their beds and being touched and so forth. So when we did this investigation, we ran into two women. One of them was an older woman in her 60s, and the other woman was a younger woman in her 30s. And they conveyed to myself and another medium that they were murdered in this house many, many years ago. And it turned out we managed to get a police report about the house after the investigation that confirmed everything that myself and the other medium sensed. And it was horrific. But the face that you're talking about appeared in an orb, the most simple form of a ghost can take, a round ball of light. When we went to the basement area, one of our photographers took a picture, and that orb showed up, and we blew it up, and in the top part of it, there was a face of a woman. She had her mouth closed, so it was more of a contemplative expression
So
on her
let me
face.
look for that again. So if people are listening to us and want to see that, it is on your LinkedIn account, and where else can they find it?
So they can actually they can see the face of that woman on the cover of my book, Lessons Learned from Talking to the Dead. That story appears in that book and the Case Files of Inspired Ghost Tracking, but the face itself appears on the cover of Lessons Learned. So you just have to go on Amazon and put in my last name, Gutro, and you can see the cover of the book.
Gutro. So for everyone that is listening, just write G as in Gabriel, U, T as in Thomas, R-O. And look for that. It's really interesting. And also all of your other books. And I've read that you are about to have another book on cats.
Yes. So I have 3 series of books, and one of the series, in addition to On a Medium's Vacation, the other series is Ghosts and Spirits, and the third series is Pets in the Afterlife that we talked about before on the show. Mm-hmm. And this will be my 4th book in the series, and it's called Pets in the Afterlife 4, Messages from Spirit Cats. So for all the cat parents out there, this book is entirely devoted to you and all the cats and their messages. And it's coming in 2023 in January. I'm finishing up the edits right now.
Yeah, because I was reading and it piqued my interest that you have found a very profound difference in how dogs communicate from the afterlife as to cats. Is that right?
They are different based on their personalities and their behaviors. Because dogs seem to be more sociable and cats seem to be more aloof, more independent, they communicate based on the way that they generally live. So it's all about their personalities. And it's fascinating what they can reveal, too. Just like people, you know, they communicate the way that they did in life. So I will tell you, though, that like when I go on vacation, some of these ghosts can be shy, kind of like a cat. They can be kind of shy, and they're less apt to come forth. Meanwhile, the ones with the more boisterous personality, they will be the first ones to call out to you. They'll be the first ones to let you know that they're there. So one thing that I would like to let listeners know is that when you do go on vacation, if you are at all sensitive, close your eyes when you go into a place and see what you feel. We all have the ability to sense energy. And the way that I liken that is when you walk into a room, Claudia, and there's a whole bunch of people there. And some people you will be attracted to, you'll want to say hello to, and other people you kind of stay away from. So you're reading their energy. And we can do that whenever we go into a place, a structure, because our emotions are impressed upon the structure, the walls of the structure. And like you said before, that you can tell if a place is happy or sad or kind of heavy feeling. So people can do that when they go on vacation too. But often we are so enamored with being in a new place that we don't take the time to close our eyes and see what we can sense when we go in on a vacation and go to a different place. But I urge you to do that.
And I love when you mentioned that you bring a book with you to sketch. I think that's a good idea, to bring something just to write down whatever it is that you're feeling, because it helps you to get into that state of receiving. If you are, and maybe even a message from that you give to whoever entity or whatever energy is there is like, okay, show me, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that way I'm able to actually take notes and put together their life story. For instance, when I went into the Birdcage Theater, I went into the theater area there in Arizona, and one of the ghosts actually shared his pain of death with me. I felt a bullet go through my throat, and it was startling. I couldn't speak for a couple minutes, but he was conveying that this is what happened to him in life. This is how he died. And he also told me his name, and he also told me that he was cheating at cards, which is why he was shot in the throat at that very place as he was trying to leave the Birdcage Theater in retreat. So I sketched him out, too, and while I was standing there.
So if you were to pick your vacation series, you know, you were telling me how some are very shy and some are the opposite. Who would be your number one ghost in that that big way of calling your attention?
I think that I have to go back and say George Boleyn was probably the most impressive ghost that I encountered in my visit to England, simply because he stayed with me and he actually walked around with me throughout Hever Castle, pointing out different rooms, things that happened in different rooms, telling me about a year that he was most proud of his sister, where he burned his elbow, and various other things. I've never had a ghostly tour guide before, so he's the most impressive.
And we can all read that on Ghost on a Medium Vacation series, and we can go to Amazon and write the last name of the author, Gutro, and you can find all of the books in there, correct?
Yes, thank you very much. I really hope that folks will pick them up if they have any interest in history, whether it be the Old West in the U.S. or history of England and various other places that I'll be writing about as well. And I look forward to more adventures and sharing more things with you.
Thank you, yeah. I know you're always welcome here. And Rob, just a final thing. For people that are looking for a reading with you, what's the best way to contact you?
They can go to my website. It's robgutro.com, or if you can't figure out how to spell my last name, just type in petspirits.com, and you'll find instructions on how to get a reading. I only do readings for pets. I don't do them for people. People are much too complicated, and they have too much. It's too much drama with people, but pets are all about love, and that's what I like. I will tell you, Claudia, that I am booked out almost a year in advance, so I ask people for their patience. Yeah, I only do it on the weekends. So.
Yeah, but that's how good you are. So, well, thank you, Rob, for your time. I really, really appreciate this conversation. It was as fun as I was envisioning. So, again, anytime that you want to come back, you have the doors open here. And looking forward for your new adventures with cats and more series, Ireland. It sounds fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.